Chapter 7. Alice. I stood back to evaluate the tree, loving the fact that I could focus on this one enjoyable task for a moment. There were a dozen things I had to do, emails I needed to respond to, and follow-up phone calls to make. But for a moment, I was taking the time to trim my own tree. James was frustrating, but the day had worked out just fine. My employees were happily decorating their own space, everyone relaxed and chatting with each other. I'd managed to stick it to him with the tangle of lights. The only thing that would have made it better was if I could have stuck around to watch him struggle. But I knew when to make an exit. I didn't want to interrupt any of the groups who were working on their own trees. Plus, I needed to decorate my own so that it didn't look half done when clients came into my office. James had thoughtfully left me a box for myself, and I opened it up to investigate. Inside, there was a fresh string of lights wrapped tightly around a cardboard insert. I looped it around the tree from top to bottom and plugged it in. Tinsel was next, artistically draped here and there. Afterwards, I added a few balls, but only red and white. I left the other colors in the box, deciding I would make a statement. James disappeared without saying goodbye, but I knew where to find him. When I was done, I reluctantly went back to work, figuring the rest of my staff would do the same. They'd left me with a box of commemorative ornaments I could pass out. I took it downstairs and left it near the door, telling everyone to take one before they left for the day. After about an hour, one of the guys from First Stars and Pixie Dust came to retrieve the box with decorations I wasn't using. I thanked him, and he nodded without saying much. It looked like James had thought of everything, from arranging the activity to cleaning up afterward. He'd even provided a stand and a skirt for my tree. Somehow, working in an office with a Christmas tree was much more enjoyable than working in an empty office. Every time I finished an email, I looked up, and the sight filled me with joy. I really did love Christmas. I hoped the rest of the staff felt the same way, and that not only would they enjoy each activity, but they would reap the residual rewards of fond memories. I went home that night excited about the next day. Tuesday was the ice skating party. James didn't come into the office, and that was fine. It cleared my schedule for a whole lot of work. Everyone buckled down, but when I told them what we were doing that evening, a round of cheers erupted. It warmed my heart to know that my scheme was working. "We'll meet at the riverfront at 7 o'clock, I announced. Bring your families and friends." 7 o'clock would give people with young children a chance to feed them dinner before the party, and it would give the rest of us time to go home and shower and change. I ended up working right up to the minute alone in the office for the last hour and a half. The shop closed at 7, and I stopped in on my way out just to check on them. "We're having a skating party at the riverfront," I told the seasonal workers. "You're welcome to come. Bring your family and friends." "Thanks," one of the college kids grinned. Glancing over at the tree, I saw that it looked perfect. It brightened up the space just like the one in my office, making the entire shop look magical. We unplugged the lights to avoid a fire hazard and left together through the front door. It was a quick drive down to the riverfront. The place was a perfect venue for a Christmas party, with cute little shops lined up on a boardwalk. There was an ice skating rink not far away, open to the public on most days. James had rented it out from my office so that we would be the only ones there that evening. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Dozens of people were out on the ice, racing in circles around the track. There were fires lit in copper dishes all the way around, giving the whole thing a magical, timeless glow. In addition to the fires, 2 hot chocolate stations were mounted on either side, and children gathered around them, sipping sweet brew from real mugs. He really went above and beyond. I was expecting a simple skating event, but he made the whole thing resonate with holiday cheer. I didn't see him at first, but I was sure he and his crew were there. He was too good at his job to just set up and leave. I made the rounds, circulating through the crowd to meet everyone's wives and husbands. I shook hands and made small talk, delighted to see that everyone was having a good time. There were a few people who had opted out, but for the most part, we were all there. I still didn't see James when Marcy from accounting talked me into putting on a pair of skates. There was a shack at the far end that rented footwear to the general public, and James had thoughtfully arranged for free skates and an employee to help distribute them. I walked up, Marcy right beside me. "Size 7, I said. "Here you go." The teenager plunked a pair of size 7 skates on the counter. I sat down on a nearby bench, removed my own shoes, and laced up the new ones. "I haven't skated since I was a kid," I admitted. "It'll come back to you," Marcy promised. I took a few wobbly steps and realized that it was going to be more difficult than I'd thought. Careful to maintain my balance, I scraped along the inner circle, moving painfully from one cocoa station to the other. After a few rounds, I was done. It was exhausting and a little bit nerve-wracking, but I could see other people were enjoying themselves. I made my way to the closest hot chocolate table and ordered a cup. One of James's men poured me a mug and held it for me as I walked carefully toward a bench. When I was safely planted, he handed it over with a smile. I thanked him, relaxing back against the seat. All around me, my employees were laughing and playing. The kids were swinging around the rink, darting in and out of pockets of adults. There was Christmas music on the loudspeakers and dozens of intimate groups of people chatting about whatever around fires and on park benches. I had to admit that I had been skeptical when James first appeared in my office. I didn't think he could pull it off. Even though his company had great reviews, and even though there was no one else around who could do the things I wanted done, I still had reservations. But sitting there watching the magic unfold, I was impressed. I had been there for almost an hour, and the sun had long since vanished. There were electric lights overhead, but it was the firelight that really made the place glow. Wherever James was, he was doing a good job staying out of sight. I scanned the crowd for signs of him, telling myself that I was just trying to locate my enemy so I could avoid him. He wasn't among the children skating in the center of the rink. He wasn't at either cocoa station helping himself to a heated drink. He didn't appear to be mingling with any of the groups that I could see. I was starting to wonder if he'd bothered to show up at all when a marshmallow sailed into my cup from several feet away. It caused a splash just as I was about to take a sip, stinging my nose with chocolate. I snorted in surprise, a very unladylike response. Looking around, I found the culprit skating toward me. He pulled up right beside the bench, his technique impeccable. He had obviously been skating much more recently than I had, since he was a natural on the ice. After the first marshmallow, he launched another, hitting me on the cheek. I picked it up from where it fell and lobbed it back at him. Too quick for me, he danced out of range, holding up a third projectile to tease me with. "Don't," I warned him. "Or what?" he joked. "Or I'll dump this hot chocolate on you," I threatened. "Don't do that," he said, calming down. Holding the marshmallow where I could see it, he closed the distance between us. Without saying another word, he dropped it gently into my cup and sped away. I wiped my face clean of all traces of liquid, glancing down at the 2 new additions to my drink. They bobbed in the steaming cup like a pair of icebergs at the North Pole. I took a sip, and the added sugar tasted sweet. Maybe James wasn't really that good at his job. Maybe he was just an overgrown kid with a wicked sense of humor. I suppose this was his way of getting back at me for the lights. I didn't want to let him have the last word, but I couldn't very well go after him. He circled the rink in under a minute, passing me with a wave. I pretended to ignore him, focusing instead on finishing up my hot chocolate. But it was hard to resist watching him. He looked so powerful out there on the ice, at ease among people he'd never met. He stopped to skate alongside Mark and Todd from the graphics team, and then caught up to Craig from sales. He stopped to help one little boy who was having trouble making it back to his parents, delivering him safely to his mother on the opposite side of the rink. My eyes were drawn to his shoulders, so powerful beneath the light jacket he wore. He really was impressive, and it hurt to remember that once upon a time he had been mine. I tore my gaze away, not wanting anyone to see me ogling him. It was one thing to be friends with a man, and another thing entirely to want what we'd once had. I didn't want anything to do with him, I told myself. I was just admiring the view. There was nothing wrong with that. I knew I'd better keep my libido in check, or it was going to take me places I didn't want to go. Sighing heavily, I returned to what I had been doing, relaxing with a cup of hot cocoa. It wasn't my fault if I kept sneaking glances.